one of the things you mentioned just a little bit ago was it sounds like when people hold on to, you said, the patterns that emerge, and you as the observer come in and you can see these patterns. How do you deal with that when they're in like a negative rut and they're just kind of passing the buck all around the place? Like, how do you intervene? Like, what are some ideas for that?
I would say it depends. Like, I'm thinking of one leadership team I was working with last year, and it was just very obvious to me that the CEO was doing the work with the team because he knew that's what he should do, like tick box, but he wasn't really committed to doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually didn't call the pattern in the session because I just, the safety hadn't been and the trust hadn't been established yet. I followed up with a reflection after the session, and I even used some guidance around some content to show what happens sometimes in group dynamics and what I had observed. And not one person responded to what I had reflected. So that feedback to me was this team just doesn't really want to do the work, right? And part of that's because of their leader. Whereas in that same month, I had given almost exactly the same feedback to one leader who I had seen show up in a certain pattern of behavior on the team. And so I followed up after with an email to say, hey, I just wanted to share, like, I was curious about this, non-judgment, just what I saw. And he is someone who really takes time to think about how he's being in his leadership and his behaviors, and right away responded with a reflection back and thanked me for pointing it out. So I did it in a confidential, respectful way. I didn't do it in the session in that case because it was about his behavior with the team. And so I didn't want to sort of isolate him with his team that way. I wanted that to be his own individual reflection after. So it was the same kind of piece of feedback about a team dynamic done the same way, like respectfully through communication afterwards, whereas one group wasn't willing to do the work and he was. Then there are times where I pointed out in a session. So if I've been working with a team for a long enough time and we have that type of relationship, I have no problem calling out what I'm seeing behaviorally. And I may say it from a lens of, here's what I'm noticing. I've seen this happen now in the last, let's say, 2 meetings, and I'm just curious. You know, I might say, like, how's this working for you? Are you accomplishing what you're trying to achieve? That kind of thing. So I will call out things that I believe people need to see in their patterns, especially if I feel that there's an ability to hear it. If they can't receive the message, I'm not helping them or myself. It's just a waste of a conversation. So it has to feel safe. I have to have the sense that they really want to do the work and that they're committed to working through what might be a little bit painful because it's pointing something out about them that's not necessarily their best sides of themselves, but that they're willing to do the work because they're committed to being a better performing individual, team, etc.